Sharon West, I have a feeling that if Matthew thought one day I'd be interviewing a mom because of his fame, it would be because he was a Chicago Cubs baseball player.
He would have liked that. I was actually looking through some photos last night, and I found a couple of him on first base.
Oh, okay, that was his position?
First baseman. Yeah, I think the Chicago Tribune said he was the first baseman to watch for the year.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
he was hoping.
And he was a really good baseball
He
player,
was a
right?
great baseball player, yes.
Yeah. Did as he was in high school, did you think that might be the college path for him too, to go to the next level of playing college baseball?
No, because he was really an excellent football player too.
Oh.
So he liked both, but I never saw him pursuing sports other than just in college a little bit because he really loved the music. He did both in high school. He did, which really frustrated the coaches because they could not put two and two together. They could not put captain of the football team, star of the high school musical. They could not put those together. They couldn't figure out how they could do both, but he worked hard and did both.
He did. Was he in the school musicals and those types of things?
Yes, he was Jesus Christ in the Superstar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's a big role right there.
Yeah, big role.
Did you love those days of being in the baseball bleachers and the theater seats? And
Yes, absolutely. So much fun. We always said we spent our summers, especially with lawn chairs and bottles of water, because we were following games. We had 3 boys, so games everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't realize how similar that path was for us as well, just because my boys, same thing, love of sports and
Love
baseball
it.
in particular. But then, I mean, that third row, the first 3 seats on the left is where we always sat in the high school theater where they went to school, and that mixture of those days of literally, Connor would run from the baseball practice to play rehearsal or something. Like, that was so much fun. And then his brother was, a lead role in all the music. Like, I miss those days so much.
So fun. Yes, so much fun. And it kept them so busy. And I think it broadened their view of the world of like, I don't have to do one thing. I can be multifaceted.
Yes, and so well-rounded. I think that's
absolutely.
something that maybe kids aren't as much sometimes today, because they do feel like they have to be 100% into something, and there's a lot of pressure maybe to be the best at that one thing.
That was what I was thinking, the word pressure. There's a lot of pressure to just hone in here, but I mean, look at what wonderful children they are when they learn to do so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Chicago Cubs fan, because you raised your boys in the Chicago area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you grew up as well?
No, I grew up in Michigan. My husband grew up in Iowa. We went to college in Minnesota. We youth pastored in Wisconsin. And then my husband heard of a little tiny church in the Chicago suburbs that was looking for a pastor, and they had 7 pastors in 6 years. And we were 23, and we thought, this is amazing. This is a door open. And so we ended up going there.
How long did you stay there?
38 years.
Oh, at that same church?
Same church.
Oh,
Pastored
my goodness.
the same church 38 years.
So you were a pastor's wife for over 40 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And then and so that means that Matthew grew up as a PK, a pastor's kid.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Which he likes to say in a lot of his interviews that he's still in recovery for that.
I love it. But also, he will say, I saw a quote from him not too long ago from an interview where he said that it's so neat because he grew up on the front row of the church watching his dad lead and be a pastor. And now to see his dad on the front row of his shows and his concerts, how they've kind of traded seats. Well, how special is that for you to watch?
That is incredible. And it's a funny thing. One thing I was going to say, too, is people used to walk up to our children in church and say, which one of you are going to grow up and be like your daddy? And you could see the look on their face like, I'm not pastor. I'm not doing that. And then yet when I sit in a show and I watch Matthew minister and invite people to ask Christ into their heart, I'm like, the apple really didn't fall far from the tree. But one of the things to answer that question is that we have actually just said to Matthew so many times, you were a part of our ministry for all those years, and we are so grateful to be a part of your ministry now. So
tell me the role that you guys play. I was actually asking Matthew about that. We were catching up a little bit and telling me that he had moved and that you guys actually live on the property where they are. You're right behind them, right?
Yes.
I love that. And then I didn't realize his dad travels on the road with them. And I said, what does
Yes.
he do? And he said, he's the pastor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's still doing it today.
Yes. In fact, several years before we retired, Matthew would call and say, "Come on, Dad, I need you out there." And his heart was that he felt that his music, when he would finish a show, he said, "I look out there and people are crying and I can't yell out, 'Thank you, Cincinnati,' and run off the stage." He said, "I feel like I've pulled off bandages and then just run off the stage." And he kept saying, "Dad, I really need somebody out there to pray with people if they need prayer. I want to be able to offer that." And so that's how this was birthed, because
Wow.
he said, "I really want somebody to be there." So that's where finally Joe was able to retire, and they call him a tour pastor. So he travels with them, and he also, Matthew has a nonprofit called PopWe, and that's from his song, My Own Little World.
Yes.
Population Me. So that was birthed out of that. So Joe's the director of that, and I work with PopWe also. So that's our ministry, is like on the road. Joe prays with people. He sets up a PopWe booth and gets people familiar with Bible studies and different things we have to offer, free devotions. So that's what he does on the road.
I love
And then
that.
at home, we just had everything up.
And you are like lead prayer warrior for
Yeah.
PopWe, right? For some of the prayer requests that people can send in.
Yes, we
Yes.
have so many prayer requests. It was interesting because COVID changed a lot for PopWe, because a lot of things were shutting down, but because people were in, and then Matthew had started quarantine time, and he started those little daily online meetings with people. Yeah. And that birthed a lot of people sending in their prayer needs. They just kind of identified and found a place to land. So we do have a lot of prayer needs. So that's part of what they do.
Which I think is so interesting that that's kind of the main role that you take now, because Matthew talks about his most vivid childhood memories are seeing you pray for him, sometimes on your knees, but getting to hear you praying for him. I have a similar memory of my grandmother. I would wake up so many mornings to the smell in a tiny little home, and I lived with my grandmother for a lot growing up. But this the smell of coffee, corn check cereal, her robe, and her in a rocking chair that I could see from her bedroom where I slept in the bed with her, and hear her verbally praying for me every morning. And it's something I'll never forget, and I feel like has
Priceless.
greatly impacted my life.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Prayers never go unanswered.
Absolutely. What was the role of prayer for you as you mothered we should mention 3 boys. We're certainly talking about Matthew today, but you is Matthew the oldest?
Yes.
Okay, 2 younger brothers, and their names are?
Joel and Adam.
Joel and Adam. Okay. Tell me just kind of about the role as a mom of prayer.
I think it's everything, but and I'll make that a little bit clearer. But a lot of people, and you'll find too, as you're out there, people say, "How did you raise such amazing children?" And you just think as a mom, "Oh my goodness, it wasn't anything I did." That's the way you feel humble about it.
And it wasn't easy.
No, like it wasn't. Yeah, no, not at all. And but I felt that it was something I couldn't do alone. I couldn't, even though I had an awesome mom, I felt that when I got into this, this was harder than I thought, having wisdom and knowing what to do and needing strength. And so praying for them, but also just understanding and believing the power that prayer has over your children. I just love covering them in prayer. Even now, as they're adults, and I'm sure you do the same thing, just praying over them and praying for God's best, praying for their relationships with the Lord, their relationships with their wives.
That hedge of protection around them.
Absolutely.
And we have kids, you and I do, that travel and are on the road so much, and that brings a whole other layer
The whole
of
protection,
yes.
everything, and just their lifestyle. They're just. I was watching your interview with your son actually this morning, and I was appreciating about that lifestyle of busyness and being out there. And what did he say? He said something about being on all the time, and I so know what that means. I'm sure every mother of an artist knows what that means, and that's a lot of pressure for them, and they need to come home and decompress.
Right. Yes. He definitely is someone that, he's just kind of always needed his alone time and quiet time
Yeah.
to recharge. And then he
Yes.
can be on and be around people. But, even his friends, I can remember middle school and high school, he'd be with a group of friends and they might all, let's say they're all in our bonus room playing video games
Right.
or something. And then he would disappear for a little while. And so he just kind of had to go take a breath and come back and be
Sure.
fine. But he might be up in his room playing guitar. And now he has that same core group of boys that he went to high school with. But they'll tell me stories about like, we finally just figured out that's just how Connor's wired. It's nothing
He just
personal.
steps away.
Yeah, he just needs to step away and then he can step back in. But we see that in his, sometimes now he has to go get in the woods. If he's home for a couple of days, maybe just, yeah, just get alone and recharge. But that artist life is a whole different thing.
Matthew goes to the story house.
Yes,
He's
exactly.
got a little story house in the back, and that's where he goes back there.
Is that on the
and-
property where you
Yes.
guys are as well? Okay.
Yes.
And is that a recording studio or?
It is. He
Okay.
does recording. He does meetings back there, and it's kind of just his recharge place. But I do see that lifestyle is draining, and I do see the importance of praying over them, seeing them recharge, so that they can keep giving out.
Right.
Because people receive their music, people love it, and it's almost like it takes a little bit out of them. Does that make sense? Especially when you give it 100%.
Exactly. At what point did you and your husband decide to go ahead and move down here to begin supporting Matthew and Emily, not only in their ministry and Matthew's travels, but probably to help with the Grand Girls a little bit too,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Well, we've been here 11 years. And so when we finally retired, that's when we said, okay, we're going to come down and be a part of this. And then my goal was to be a help with Emily and my other grandchildren so that Emily could be a part of what Matthew did. I felt that was very important, that, your wife gets to be a part of that, gets to go
Right.
out on the road. That's where she's this weekend. I
Okay.
have the girls and she's out on the road so that she can be a part of everything. And what was funny is when we first moved here, we had bought a home in the area and we were planning on moving there. And Matthew called one day and said, no, we're going into this new house and it has an in-laws quarters. So why don't you just move in there? Because we'll be traveling and you can help Emily more. And we said, okay, great. So we moved in. I'm not kidding. I think we were there 2 days, and Matthew comes running upstairs and says, Mom, how do you feel about going on the road? And my first thought was, no. A bus full of boys? No, I don't think so. But just as I started to answer, the Holy Spirit spoke to my heart, and I said, well, let me pray about it. And he said, okay, but we only have 2 days. And so that launched into us going out on the road as a family. So we traveled for a couple of years out on a family bus, and I got to help homeschool and be a part of everything and be at all the shows, be a part of taking the girls halfway through the show back to the bus.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, bus life. And Emily and Matthew would say, get them back there, get them in bed. I would get them on the bus and I would have 2 spider monkeys and they would be climbing between the bunks and all of this. And so bedtime was a challenge, but it was fun. But see, so I got to be a part of that for a few years and I love that.
Oh, I bet that was so much fun for you.
So much fun. I love being, anytime I can get to the shows or be on the road, absolutely love it.
Yeah, you still go a lot, right?
I try to, yes.
Yes. That's awesome. Tell me about when Emily came to the picture and when you first remember meeting his sweet wife.
That's a great one. He met her when he had tried to get a record deal in several, places, and he would get turned down. But he's the kind that doesn't get discouraged. If you turned him down, he would say, well, all right, I'll fix that and I'll come back. If they didn't like his song, he'd say, I'll write you another one. So he finally got an open door at a record company. And when he walked in, he met her. She was in artist development, which we teased her a lot about that.
Oh,
and so
she was working for one of the record companies.
She was working for the record company.
Okay.
And so, which is a bonus for her because then this type of lifestyle wasn't anything new for her.
She had a little understanding of how everything worked, which is important.
Yes. And so he did his showcase and everything. So then I can't remember the name of the man, but he said, I'm going to have a picnic at my house, so I'd like you to make sure Matthew comes, the new artist comes. So Emily did that, and then it just
Started a
blossomed.
relationship.
And so Matthew always says, I got a record deal and a wife at the same time. So that's precious. So we hear about her, and he just can't say enough wonderful things about her and how beautiful she is. So he sends us a picture, and she has been in country videos, from years past. So he
Oh.
sends like what do you call those photos?
Like a headshot?
Headshot.
Yeah.
And we hang it on the refrigerator. And so when she comes in the door to meet us, and you never know what kind of home they're from. And we had such a tiny little home in Chicago. It was just little tiny home, so I'm a little intimidated. But so she came in the door, and when she saw the headshot on the refrigerator, it just kind of broke the ice. And we all laughed like, oh, we're all real. This is okay. We can do this.
She's probably a little embarrassed and not thinking that's what potential future mother-in-law would, her first impression, right?
Yeah, it was like, oh my goodness, this girl is gorgeous. And when she walked in, she was even more beautiful, and her spirit was just what touched our hearts. We absolutely loved her.
Did you know she was the one for Matthew?
Oh, he sure did. Yeah, he sure did. And we really had no question. We just really loved her. We trusted his judgment. And they weren't in a huge 3-year relationship, but it was great. We were excited. We never had any questions, any doubts.
Well, I loved the interview, and I would love to tell our listeners there's a great episode. First of all, the Matthew West podcast is incredible, and there is an interview that Matthew does with Emily, and then he brings you in, and I loved that episode. But it was so interesting to me hearing about Emily's perspective of the role that you've played in her life. And Emily grew up, we grew up a little bit similar with a little bit of void of some things in our life, but she said that you've really helped to fill that role and the impact that you've had. It sounds like you guys have a very special relationship.
We do. One of the things that I love about her is that she's very, very open and very honest, and I appreciate that. And to be able to live together for all these years, we respect each other, and
not just anybody would say, sure, my mother-in-law, we'd love to have you right here in the house.
I'm dying to have you here. They don't come home and we're sitting on the couch eating Cheerios. We have our space.
You figured that out.
We have our space. But I guess that maybe what touched her heart, and I hope it did, is that I wanted her to see me as a person who was not coming in to control her life, the mother-in-law that tells her, do this, do that. I wanted her to feel me as a helpful presence. Does that make sense?
Yes, as support.
Yes, a support, a helpful set. And when the girls were little, one day Matthew said, Mom, Emily and I just want you to kind of help us co-parent these girls. And I was blown away by that.
Wow.
So I haven't taken that lightly, and I haven't, but I also haven't taken over.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's probably a fine line to walk, too.
Just a support. Yeah.
Wow,
We're
that's
just
a really
here.
bold
You want to go on the
statement.
road, we're here. And if you need anything, we're here. But it doesn't mean we're all up in each other's business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like you walk the line beautifully.
We try.
And that speaks so highly to Matthew's view of his childhood, the impact that you and his father had on his life, that he would say, we want your advice. We want you to play maybe a bigger role than normal in actually parenting. That's a bold statement.
I was so touched by that. The girls were little, and that has been that was a gift.
Absolutely. And you are one of those that you'll tote them around if they need to be. You're at all the games or the whatever they're into, right?
We have 4 games this weekend. Yes, we have 4 games this weekend. And last night they came in from school, 3 extra girls. And then we also had a sleepover last night, unexpected. One little girl's dad had to be rushed to the hospital. So if you're there, you just roll with it.
Yeah, that's so one of the things. Yeah, and that's probably what makes you such a great mother-in-law and grandmother, is that you have to be able to roll with it. And sometimes that's challenging for a grandparent role.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and they say the older you get more set in your ways. So I'm trying not to do that.
Trying to be open to
I'm trying to, yes.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing an excellent job. So let's go back to some of the things that Matthew's talked about that I think that were kind of key in his ministry, because he was able to talk about some valley times that he went through, particularly with his music career. But I remember one of the very first times I met Matthew after we had moved to Nashville in 2005. Just a couple of years later, 2007, he had some really significant vocal issues,
Yes.
had to have surgery that threatened his music career,
Yes.
that was really at the height of his music. Like, he
Yes.
was really getting going.
Yes.
Tell me about what that was like for your family to walk through.
That was really difficult to watch. You know, we came to Nashville to help, and it was a difficult to watch him have to go through that. And we had seen him several years before have an arm injury.
Yes, tell me about that. That was quite dramatic as well.
It was. He lived in a little old duplex in Green Hills, and he went out for a run, and he forgot his keys, went back and went to push the window open, and a shard of glass severed the muscle belly in his arm, and he was running through the street, and he was, yelling for help because he was bleeding. And a Hispanic man heard him, who had been working, and hollered to him, ran to him, got him covered up, and he said, Matthew said he remembers him saying Jesus, Jesus over him.
Wow.
And so, but Matthew went in, but then it turned into a bigger deal to where they told him he may lose the use of his arm, and he may not be able to play guitar again.
What stage of his career was this accident?
That was just like the month or so before he was going to sign his record deal.
Oh.
Because I have photos of him signing his record deal with his arm still in a cast and all wrapped.
Oh my gracious. And that would impact, if people aren't putting that together, it would impact playing the guitar.
Absolutely.
And a key thing for an artist.
And he was and then he was afraid they would not sign him because, well, that's part of who he was. But at that point in his life, the way that impacted him was that he said he remembers laying in that hospital bed and just saying, okay, God, what do you want me to do with my life? If this isn't the direction I was supposed to go and this is going to be taken from me, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll be a youth pastor. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And so that was very key for him, just releasing everything to the Lord.
Wow.
And so they went ahead and signed him, and everything moved forward. But then fast forward to this with the vocal, then he was very terrified because they said to him at Vanderbilt, your voice may not sound the same. You may not have the quality. It may be entirely different. So for an artist, and that's what you do, this was very frightening.
That's how he made his living. And there was, that's something that takes 2 to 3 months to heal from. Complete vocal rest.
Complete vocal
He had a
rest.
whiteboard, didn't he?
Yes. I'm trying to think, I stayed there in Nashville with him and Emily, and I believe that it was 4 to 6 weeks, but I remember him with the whiteboard. But he always laughs and said, Emily says that's the best season of their marriage.
Those were the most peaceful 2 months of their marriage.
But I remember him going out on the front porch and sitting in the swing and having to write what he wanted to tell her. And so, talk about having alone time.
Yes.
You can be in the room, but you can't communicate the way you're used to. Right. And then your whole future feels like it's hanging in the balance.
Right. The uncertainty of not knowing.
Yes, the uncertainty. Very well put.
But God is good, and he came back so strong. And it feels like, as a fan of Matthew, he didn't skip a beat when it came to the music. And he had some incredible, I think that valley in his life gave him some incredible content to write about of things he had, the doubt he dealt with through that. And then, just the fear. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Doubt and fear. And our family is a family of storytellers. My side of the family was always storytellers. And I think that's where Matthew has been able to reach into those times in his life and pull out, be able to tell his story, but tell it in a song.
Right. Speaking of telling in a song, the song Becoming Me, how, my gracious, that had to be incredibly special for you the first time you heard that.
Absolutely. I cried. There's been many songs that I've heard that have made me cry, but that touched me very much.
The statement that resounded with me so much that I would love to know that my children would say about me one day is that my mom feels like home. That one is pretty special, and just a validation that you did a good job, Mama.
Oh, I tell you that. What could be better? That just touches your heart, because you do, as a mom, you feel humble. You do your best. You make your mistakes. Every parent makes decisions, makes mistakes, reacts wrong. You know, we're nobody's perfect, but to know that in the end, your children want to wrap their arms around you and they feel safe, and it's mom and it's home, and that's a blessing.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that it might have been in Matthew's podcast that you said is that you and your husband, I think Matthew asked you if you felt like your role as a mom and a grandmother was a calling for you. And you talked about how you and your husband kind of set a goal early on that your biggest life goal was to be a successful mother and father.
Yes, of all the things that we can accomplish and be successful at, and pastoring takes so much. It can take top priority if we let it. You know, we can let other people's needs and our goals and our dreams. And we used to paraphrase a scripture, which I'm sure you're not supposed to do, but we paraphrase the scripture, if I gain the whole world but lose my own soul, we would say, if I gain the whole world but I lose my own children. Ooh. And we kind of just kept that in our head and tried to let our children know that it was God and them.
Wow.
And then our ministry.
Yeah, so. I like that paraphrase. Tell me a little bit about, you were talking about Matthew's determination. You saw that in him at a very young age, though, right? I mean, you knew that you were dealing with someone who probably, not only did he not take no when it came to record deals and publishing and music and songs, but he didn't take no in general very well as a child.
Yes. That's funny because he was a negotiator. He could negotiate teachers. He could negotiate. And one of my best stories of him being young that kind of gives you an idea of how he carried on in his career is, you know, with having more than one child, getting them all dressed to go somewhere. I had all three of them ready to go. And he walked over to the front door, and I said, everybody stay here. You know, we don't want anybody getting dirty before we head out. Everybody stay here. So I look over, he's got his hand on the front doorknob, and he said, can I go out? And I said, no, we're not going out today. And he stood there and he goes, well, can I go out for like 10 minutes? And the whole time his hand never leaves the doorknob. And I said, no, we're not going out at all, not even for 10 minutes. How about for 3 minutes? No, we're not going out for 3 minutes. And he stands there, his hand still doesn't leave the knob, and he says, how about if I just open the door and stick my foot out? And that's when you realize he's going to just, and I call it tenacity, and so it has carried him through.
Yeah, that's so funny. He was going to find a way.
He was going to find a way, and I feel like that has carried through his life.
Yeah.
It's like, if there's a roadblock, I'll find a way. And so when you're a mom and you're dealing with it, it's not that much fun. But when they're an adult and you see that they've used that to go forward. So sometimes when I'm talking with parents, I tell them, it's okay if we see a little bit of that stubbornness, a little bit of that, one-mindedness.
Right. I used to say that with my oldest. I'm like, he's going to be an incredible leader one day, because let me tell you, he knows how to take charge.
Yes, there you go.
For sure.
We see that when they're young.
But when they're 3 and 4, it's just not the best trait. But now, yes, that's actually a really a significant quality in there that has worked out for him, for sure. So you have a great story about the couch versus the guitar.
Yes. Matthew was in college, and he'd come home to visit for just a couple of days. I happened to be in Michigan visiting my grandmother, and I get a phone call, and they're a little hesitant. My husband and Matthew are a little bit hesitant on the phone, and they said, we would need to tell you something. And I said, what is it? Well, we bought a guitar. Well, that wouldn't have been bad, except that we'd been saving money to buy me a new sofa. And so they're explaining themselves away about, well, but this was a deal, and he really needs it. And I hear Matthew in the background say, but Mom, it has mother of pearl.
Trying to say, it's beautiful.
It's
You'll
so
love
beautiful.
it.
And I took it well, but it was hilarious because I thought, well, there you go.
Yeah. And looking back, I'm sure that guitar has paid off for the entire family.
Absolutely.
Way more than the couch.
Way more.
Did you get your couch, though?
Oh, sure.
Eventually.
I was going to tell how Matthew, he gets so busy, and I'm sure a lot of artists get so busy that they don't maybe catch all the details of telling your mom something. Like sometimes Matthew will have a number one and I won't see it, but I'll see it on Facebook. So then I'll text him, Yay!
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I saw this on social media.
I saw, yes, your
Yes.
manager said this. And but the one time in particular that I thought of is that I pulled up in front of the church where we were pastoring, and I had Christian radio on, I believe it was Caleb, and they were saying they were doing this big contest for Matthew's new album, History.
This was the very first album, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And they said 20 people throughout the United States are going to win a trip to Downers Grove, Illinois, and they're going to visit his childhood home and have dinner with his parents and go to his high school. And I hadn't heard a word about it. And I got out of the car and I walked into the foyer of the church and my phone rings. Matthew goes, Mom,
By the way,
I forgot to tell you. And it was hilarious.
I cannot believe you heard that on the radio.
I heard on the radio
before.
first. Yeah, because we had a little small house, and I put a big banner up, with his full, childhood home of Matthew West. It was hilarious. I mean, it took them 2 minutes to go through the whole house. And then the couch where he gave his heart to the Lord, I literally roped it off. It was
like they're at Graceland or something.
Yeah, I tried to make it fun. I put his first pair of jeans in a shadow box, and I displayed his Cabbage Patch doll. So
no, we're not
fun.
stopping at displayed his Cabbage Patch doll. Okay, breaking news: Matthew West had a Cabbage Patch doll.
Oh, he still has it. I have it in a box.
Okay, is it a boy or a girl?
It's boy.
Okay, what was his name? Tell me the story.
Oh my goodness!
Is this something he asked for Christmas or something?
Well, it was when the Cabbage Patch dolls were the big rage, and so everybody stood in line and waited all over. And
I well remember.
Oh, yes. So everybody had a Cabbage Patch. But I do remember he and the other co-captain, his friend Jeff of the football team, they both had him, and they would take him to sleepovers once in a while.
Oh, I guess a joke from their childhood.
No, when they were kids, they would have a sleepover and take their Cabbage Patch once in a while.
Stop. Oh, my goodness. Okay, how will Matthew feel about you sharing that story?
I think he'll think it's hilarious or he won't remember. But Jeff's mom, his friend's mom, one day when they were co-captains of the football team, she threatened to make a picture of the both of them holding their dolls and hang it in the locker room. She didn't, and I know both boys are grateful.
Oh, I wish she had.
Hilarious.
That is awesome. I cannot wait till the next time we're on a red carpet. I'm interviewing Matthew. I'm going to say, tell me about the Cabbage Patch doll.
I should get it out for him, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, so you have it or he has it?
I have it in a box.
Okay, I'm not there yet, so I'm always curious, but what is the difference or the better part, I guess, of being a grandmother over being a mom?
Oh, discipline, not having to feel the ultimate responsibility for disciplining. The part I do love is I love being able to pray for them, be in their life. One of the things we started when the girls were little is at night we'd go in to say goodnight to them, and we'd share a little story of when we were growing up. And they got used to doing that and hearing just little memories. So that's been fun. So
that's a great tip to give. Yeah. Picture you in a room talking to young moms with all of your incredible experience. The relationship that you have with your children, and particularly we get to hear about Matthew talk about it. But I think that's goals for all of us is to have a relationship that your son is obviously so proud of you and respectful of your parenting journey. What would you say to young moms?
I would want them to understand that when we make mistakes, it's okay. That we don't beat ourselves up when we make a decision that might not have been the right one, and that we have a sense of humor. So not blaming ourselves so much for everything. Have a sense of humor when we raise our kids. I mean, you know, the things our children have done, the things your sons have pulled, and sometimes you want to discipline them, but you know it's hysterical, and so keep a sense of humor and just constantly praying over your children and believing God really does have a plan for them. Jeremiah 29:11, he has a plan for them. And in some of those things, we can take comfort that God is doing good things in their lives, and just pray that they take the best of us into them, that they become a little bit of that.
That leads so beautifully into my favorite question that I ask all of my guests. What did Matthew West get from his mama?
I would like to say that one of the things, I think he got the storytelling. I think the storytelling is part, like I had mentioned, it's part of our family. And I think he got, I'm praying that he got a heart for God.
I bet he would say that for sure.
And the importance of praying. So those are the three things I think.
Man, you've done such a great job as a mom. You have so much wisdom, and I loved that you were able to be here and share some of that with us today and just learning a little bit more about Matthew. He's incredibly talented, we all know, but he's also incredibly kind and just the nicest guy and funny too.
And that's what you want to hear as a mom, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
With mama voice, you just want to hear that people see good things in them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharon. I've loved talking to you today.
Thank you for having me.